This meeting is being recorded.
There we go. We're good.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. The meeting is being live streamed, and again, press 6 on your phones if you're calling in to either mute or unmute yourself. As permitted by the governor's disaster declaration dated Friday, January 6th, the determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent to this board. To ensure a transparent, open meeting as possible, the meeting materials were posted approximately 1 week in advance. A recording of this meeting will be provided and linked on our website, and all votes will be taken by roll call. Aaron, you want to call a roll?
Thank you. Mayor Bennett,
Present.
Frank Beal,
Present.
President Brawley, Mayor Darch,
Present.
Paul Goodrich,
Present.
Jim Healy, Nina Idamudia,
Present.
Mayor Noak,
Here.
President Reinbold, Mayor Rodering,
Here.
Stephen Schaefer,
Present.
Carolyn Schofield,
Here.
Ann Sheehan,
Here.
Matt Walsh,
Present.
Diane Williams,
Present.
Leanne Redden, and Kuros Mahamadian.
Present.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a quorum, and there's going to be a slight change in the agenda because I know a couple of people may have to jump off this call, so we're going to have the executive director's report after some motions that we need for roll call or votes on. Starting first with the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Sheehan.
Seconded, Beal.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Aaron, call the roll, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye.
Frank Beal,
Aye.
President Brawley, Mayor Darch,
Aye.
Paul Goodrich,
Aye.
Jim Healy, Nina Idamudia, Mayor Noak,
Aye.
President Reinbold, Mayor Rodering,
Aye.
Stephen Schaefer,
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield,
Aye.
Ann Sheehan,
Aye.
Matt Walsh,
Aye.
Diane Williams.
I wasn't there, so I should probably abstain.
Your
Okay.
choice, yes. So noted. Thank you. Moving on to actually item 5 is under the procurements and contract approvals. We have a couple of items. Peter, you want to take it?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman Bennett, Executive Director Aleman, and all members of the board. Today, for your consideration and approval, we bring 2 contracts. First, we request approval of an extension of services for SLG Innovation in an amount not to exceed of $5,071,213 over a maximum length of 5 years. As the agency continues the current implementation of its ERP, as well as upgrading many aspects of the IT infrastructure at the agency, the continued partnership, knowledge, and continuity that SLG offers cannot be matched by any vendor in the market at this time. Continuation of this contract for at least another 3 years will allow necessary transitionary oversight and consistency at the agency. The contract itself will be structured as a 3-year agreement plus 2 one-year optional renewals based on performance and available funding. The 3-year agreement would not exceed $2.9 million, with the 2 optional years not exceeding $2.1 million for a potential not to exceed of $5 million over 5 years. Support for this contract would be contained in the annual operating budget proportionally over the course of the agreement. In addition, for your consideration and approval is a 3-year agreement with ICF for the development of a resilience improvement plan for a not to exceed amount of $834,715. This agreement will help CMAP meet the U.S. Department of Transportation's minimum elements of resilience improvement plan and make the region fully eligible to pursue promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation grant program funding. In addition, the project will implement recommendations from the 2050 Comprehensive Regional Plan and help CMAP comply with federal requirements for improving the resiliency and reliability of the transportation system, reducing stormwater impacts of surface transportation, and developing strategies to reduce the vulnerability of the existing transportation infrastructure to natural disasters and extreme weather. Support for the project will be provided by UWP funding over the course of the next 3 fiscal years. At this time, I'll open up to any questions. There are none. Thank you for your time.
Any questions of Peter? Okay, the motion would be to accept both those items, 1 and 2. Is there a motion?
Approved, Noak.
Oh, Jerry?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mayor.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask on the second one, how that 3-year agreement works in with since it's partly transportation resilience with the PART project that we're doing for the state, the 1-year plan. Just,
Yeah,
works out?
yeah.
so I can take that, Mayor Darch. The PART project, the Plan of Action for Regional Transit, is really focused on operational funding for the transit system. The contract with ICF on the Resiliency Improvement Plan is really focused on all infrastructure, but capital expenditures of infrastructure. Through the infrastructure bill that was passed, there are opportunities for counties and municipalities and the region and state DOTs and others to compete for resiliency funding and get a bigger federal share of the dollars. And so this work is helping us achieve those goals, whereas the PART project is really focused on sort of the operations and the state funding for transit.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a motion by Mayor Noak. Was there a second?
Second from Diane.
Moved and seconded. Aaron, call the roll, please.
Mayor Bennett,
Aye.
Frank Beal,
Aye.
President Brawley, Mayor Darch,
Aye.
Paul Goodrich,
Yes.
Jim Healy, Nina Itamudia,
Yes.
Mayor Noak,
Yes.
President Reinbold, Mayor Rodering,
Aye.
Stephen Schaefer,
Yes.
Carolyn Schofield,
Aye.
Ann Sheehan,
Yes.
Matt Walsh,
Yes.
Diane Williams.
Yes.
The motion
And that
carries.
motion carries. Next item is 6.0. Aaron, you're going to take that on the roadway safety performance targets for 2023 or somebody else?
You know,
Oh,
I think we have Vicki Barrett on the line who's going to talk about our roadway safety targets.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Vicki.
good morning. Good morning, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm here to share with you the staff recommended 2023 roadway safety targets. Staff is requesting that the CMAP board approve and support, approve the support of IDOT's 2023 safety targets. Next slide, please. Actually, maybe 2 slides. Great. The roadway safety targets are part of Transportation Performance Management, or TPM, which is a US DOT program that tracks national transportation related goals at the state and regional level. The FHWA requires state DOTs and MPOs to set a series of performance targets and track the progress towards achieving them. The TPMs we're discussing today are for roadway safety. The safety performance measures track progress towards the long-term goal of eliminating traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries, because no traffic-related fatality or serious injury is acceptable. The safety performance measures are the only TPM-related targets that are set annually for all public roads. The targets we're discussing today are the state's targets. We have not identified regional targets, but this is something that we can consider doing in the future. The process to set the MPO safety targets starts with IDOT sharing its roadway safety targets with staff. We review the targets and develop a staff recommendation, and we share them with various committees, including our Transportation Technology and Operations Coalition, as well as our Transportation Committee. And last week, we presented them to our MPO committee for approval. Today, they are before this committee. Next slide, please. The FHWA performs an assessment of the state's performance and determines if the targets were met or if the state made significant progress towards its targets. You can see recent assessments here on the slide for 2018 to 2020. In order to be in compliance with the safety performance measures, the state must meet or make significant progress on 4 of the 5 performance measures. If not, the HSIP apportionment may only be used for safety-related projects in the state. Next slide, please. I'll quickly go over our safety data related to our targets. The graphic here is obviously our traffic fatalities. The state data is in blue and the regional data is in green. Past statewide targets are the yellow diamonds. The format will be about the same for all the slides. The number of fatalities, as many of you are probably aware, has been increasing at an alarming rate, with a 32% increase over 2019 numbers at the state level and a 42% increase at the regional level. IDOT's fatalities target is in bold and it is set at 1,088.1. This represents a 2% annual reduction from the 2021 5-year average. Next slide, please. This graphic shows the trend for the rate of fatalities per amount of travel per 100 million VMT. Like fatalities, the rate of fatalities has increased at an alarming rate at both the state and regional level. IDOT has used a policy-based 2% annual reduction in the 5-year average to set this target. This results in the most current rate of 1.097 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. To drop to 1.054 for 2023. Next slide, please. This graphic shows the trend for the number of serious injuries, and there was a sharp decline that started in 2018 and then an increase in 2021. This is something that we're tracking. This is interesting because the number of fatalities actually spiked at the same time, suggesting that crashes have become more severe. It's also one of the targets that we have actually hit consistently for the last few years. The 2023 target is 9,316.7. Next slide, please. This slide shows the rate of serious injuries per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. The CMAP region and state were running pretty much even, but this past year, the region's rate is a little higher than the state's. Again, this is another target we have hit in the last few years. The target for the rate of serious injuries is set at 9. And this was used, was set using a trend line method. Finally, our last target, this slide shows the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, our most vulnerable roadway users. Both the state and region saw a decrease in 2020, but the trend went back up for 2021. The target for this measure used the policy-based 2% annual reduction in the 5-year average, going from 1,495.6 to 1,438.9 in 2023. And finally, our recommendation on the next slide. Staff recommends supporting IDOT's 2023 roadway safety targets. These targets are aggressive, especially for the fatality-related targets. And this allows for the state and region to have a unified target to strive towards. To help support meeting our roadway safety targets, CMAP has several ongoing and expanded safety-related initiatives. CMAP continues to take actionable steps to improve regional roadway safety. Among those activities are a new and expanded safety program, which is now called STAR, Safe Travel for All Roadmap, which will continue and expand the agency's planning and policy work on traffic safety. We have also developed a regionally coordinated U.S. Department of Transportation Safe Streets for All application. And we will be doing safety action planning for the counties in our region in the coming year and years. As CMAP and its partners continue to develop actionable steps and strategies to address safety on our roadways, CMAP will consider best practices when setting meaningful and achievable future roadway safety targets, which may include setting a separate regional target. We're also working on a series of performance measure dashboards. There's an image of one that we're developing here so that safety data can be more accessible to our regional partners. They'll include graphics showing the trends and annual targets along with a map and text describing the targets and why we track it. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or if anyone would like to make a comment.
Questions or comments?
I have a question, if possible. Well, I understand that the measures that you guys are using here is exposure based. So basically, you're just considering everything based on vehicle mileage driven. So comparing apple to apple. So that's somehow addresses the issue of the decline in travel during the pandemic that we saw, actually just the decline in accidents and fatalities and injuries that you showed is basically in the past 3 years that we were through the pandemic. So you try to address the portion of that by using that exposure-based measure. But we also need to keep in mind that the pattern of travel has changed. So because of the popularity of teleworking, now we have probably the same VMT in the roadways, but these are not typical commuters.
Right.
And that's, the pattern that you expect to continue also need to be actually looking to that. When you put your target, numbers for the future, we need to actually keep in mind that whether the same pattern is going to be continued or no, we're going to go back to what we had before the pandemic. So I would suggest considering those factors into the analysis.
You make an excellent point. These particular performance measures are the ones that are required by the FHWA, but as we move towards a more nuanced regional picture of traffic safety, I think you're right. Some of the trends we saw were, typically until the pandemic hit, that there were higher crash rates on weekend overnight. And one of the things that we saw is that crashes were more spread out over the entire week. So the time that people are traveling, the way in which people are traveling, and the distances that people are traveling are a really big factor in how congested our roadways are and how fast people are going. You make an excellent point. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that we're still probably 2 years out from post-pandemic to see those numbers somewhat, get at a normal pattern or at least a trend. And until, as I recall, a couple of years ago when we went through this, it was quite an anomaly with what the pandemic had done to traffic fatalities, and also we talked about speed on the highway. People with less vehicles were driving crazy. And interesting too with the pedestrian or non-motor vehicle fatalities that. That changed too over the course of that year and a half or 2 years with the pandemic. So I agree too that it could be a couple more years out before we see some type of again, I want to call it a normal trend, but a trend that really reflects what's going on right now.
Right, or a new normal, exactly.
Yes, a new normal. Any other questions?
I
Looks
see
like
Anne.
Yeah.
Oh, I just had a question. How do these recommendations sort of dovetail or work with existing Vision Zero plans?
Yes, that's a very good point. We have a Vision Zero goal in our On to 2050 plan. And the 2% reduction prior to the pandemic, our 2% annual reduction kind of had us on track to achieving that by 2050. The pandemic has definitely caused us to kind of stop and question what we can do in terms of having meaningful targets, and is going to inform, I think, going forward, what kind of safety targets we want to set as an agency. And we're talking with other NPOs. And as we adopt a Vision Zero strategy through the Safe Streets for All planning, which is part of the programming, we'll need to reconcile how we're going to address achieving Vision Zero and also setting safety targets that we can stand behind.
Great, thanks.
Other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion that we approve the roadway safety performance targets for 2023. Is there a motion?
So
Motion,
moved.
no.
Sheehan.
Sure. Second,
Second.
George.
Thank
Original
you.
was Carter, second was Sheehan. Aaron, call the roll, please.
What?
Mayor Bennett,
Aye.
Frank Beal,
Aye.
President Brawley,
Aye.
Mayor Darch,
Aye.
Paul Goodrich,
Aye.
Jim Healy,
Aye.
Nina Itamudia,
Aye.
Mayor Noak,
Aye.
President Reinbold, Mayor Rotering,
Aye.
Stefan Schaefer,
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield,
Aye.
Ann Sheehan,
Aye.
Matt Walsh,
Aye.
Diane Williams.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. And our last item that we're going to have to vote on is in regards to the 2023 federal state advocacy agenda. John, you're going to do that?
And if I could just butt in for 1 second, I'll just ask that the chair recognize we had President Brawley, Jim Healy, and Leanne Rudden join the meeting. Leanne, I want to just confirm.
So, Rick. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is John Carpenter, and I'm the Intergovernmental Affairs Director here at CMAP. Today, we're sharing with you the final draft advocacy agenda for approval. We're grateful to the board's comments about the agenda and have made some adjustments in response to the feedback provided at our last meeting. Specifically, in response to the question raised by Member Redden of the RTA, we did some reorganization of the agenda to include more of the transit funding language in the transportation section of the agenda. This also reflects similar questions we're exploring in the Plan of Action for Regional Transit, which you will hear more about later on from Laura. With your approval, this agenda will serve as the backbone of our state and federal advocacy program. And we hope that you're able to support us and join us in advancing these priorities. We look forward to providing the board with regular updates of our legislative progress in Springfield and in Washington. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. With me today are Tim and Kasia as well. But we would ask your support for and approval for the legislative agenda.
Additional questions? You guys put a lot of work into this, and it's.
Thank you.
No further questions? Aaron, you want to call, or I'm sorry, I'll entertain a motion to accept that agenda.
Motion, Noak.
Second, Diane.
A little hesitant this morning, everyone. Need that extra cup of coffee. Moved and seconded. Again, any questions or comments? Aaron, call the roll, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye.
Frank Beal.
Aye.
President Brawley.
Yes.
Mayor Darch.
Yes.
Paul Goodrich.
Yes.
Jim Healy.
Aye.
Nina Adamudia.
Aye.
Mayor Noak. President Reinbold.
Aye.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Noak. Mayor Rotering.
Aye.
Stephen Schaefer.
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield.
Aye.
Ann Sheehan.
Aye.
Matt Walsh.
Yes.
And Diane Williams.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. We are done with the voting portion of this agenda, and Aaron will let you now speak.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for shuffling the agenda around. I know we wanted to get a couple of those items voted on and moved off of our plate this morning here. I wanted to say Happy New Year. I know that it's, not the first day of the new year, nor is it the first week, but I am so appreciative of all of your commitment to continued regional work, our collaboration. I think, again, this year is shaping up to be a busy year and exciting, but I think we are already hitting the ground running. Since June of 2022, we have been leading convenings of our region's transportation implementers, including IDOT, the county DOTs, Chicago DOT, our transit agencies, Tollway, Amtrak, and the CREATE partnership to build consensus around the most competitive, regionally significant projects and align them with federal infrastructure bill funding opportunities. Included in your packet today, you'll see that conclusion of that work here. And you'll see that when you make an investment in the region's infrastructure, you're making an investment in the infrastructure of our nation's country, or of our nation's economy. The priority booklet includes some 24 transformational investments that will provide significant investment and benefits to our region. All of these projects are major priorities from transportation implementers included in the On to 2050 plan. And again, will help our region be more competitive as we pursue federal funding. This is really what we heard from our peers and our partners at the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration throughout this process. And again, it's what we're seeing from our peers across this country. I'm headed to DC next month for the National Association of Regional Councils conference, but I'm making time to get to the Hill to present this booklet to our congressional delegation, to the administration, and to USDOT staff. We hope that you will do the same if you're interested in copies, or you'll have meetings with important legislators that you would like to get this in front of. I think the more the merrier. Please do reach out to us and let us know if we can support you. Going forward, we intend to update this booklet annually through our infrastructure convening coordinating working group that we stood up through this that will continue convening throughout this year. On your agenda today, I'll provide a brief summary of our proposed draft 2024 budget and work plan. I know we also sent you all a link to the document with a video, including highlights from the work plan. I want to say thanks for those of you who've sent kind notes. It's something we're trying new this year. Our communications team, I think, did an awesome job summarizing that and getting us all to, be on camera, which always isn't everybody's most favorite thing to do. But on your packet today, this is just an informational item. In February, we will ask the board for your approval. Additionally, the Transportation Committee will review the proposed financial fiscal year 2024 UWP budget at its next meeting, and then we will be seeking MPO Policy Committee approval at their March meeting. We have officially kicked off our PART project, which is short for a Plan of Action for Regional Transit, yesterday. The steering committee held its first meeting. Again, you'll be hearing about this on your agenda from now until October and probably beyond. So we'll hopefully answer questions and things that have piqued your interest during that presentation. I also wanted to share with you all that last week, CMAP publicly announced that 26 communities throughout the region will receive technical assistance from CMAP to improve traffic safety, to make travel more accessible, and to help them prosper in years ahead. We always, as has become a tradition, worked with RTA to host the call for communities to apply to our joint technical assistance programs. We received a total of 64 applications from 55 different applicants. We have a long history of prepping our communities for better futures, and this call for projects is no different. The agency will be working with communities on developing safety action plans and better protecting bicyclists and pedestrians. As you saw, we aren't achieving our traffic safety goals. And again, it's our hope that by continuing to focus on some of the tactical needs that are happening at the local level, we can help assist our communities with their biggest safety challenges as well. We'll be also partnering with communities to strengthen compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and supporting them with grant opportunities and helping them address long-term capital needs. So again, we look forward to working with all of you to build a stronger region where communities can thrive together. That concludes my executive director's report, but you're going to hear from me again in a moment on the budget and work plan, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Any questions? Aaron, continue.
Okay, well, moving on to the draft FY 2024 budget and work plan. I know you all watched the video that we compiled here. I just wanted to make a few notes and highlights here and a brief overview of the work plan process and our highlights from that document there. Again, the proposed budget and work plan is the culmination of lots of planning that continues on throughout the year as we assess our needs. We look at our resources that are available to us and potential impacts of our work. Throughout this, though this process really kicks into high gear in October through December, that's when we receive our federal mark from IDOT for our next year's budget. So this is really a year-round process. We develop our work plan items for the upcoming fiscal year from July through September in anticipation of that mark. And the items developed are developed in alignment with our strategic direction, our 5-year plan that prioritizes the goals and objectives of the 2050 plan. There's just so much in there. We really need to think about where we can best leverage our funding resources and our expertise. In the last quarter of the year, CMAP develops the work plan further as the UWP grants to our partner agencies are finalized in December and the call for projects for our LTA program are announced, vetted, and chosen. So now we are entering the phase of our budget process when we present our proposed budget and work plan to the CMAP board for information. Again, as I mentioned in our next meeting, you'll see it for approval. And then we submit that updated version and document to IDOT. IDOT may, from time to time, ask for some adjustments in our budget until we come to agreement with IDOT in May or June. That budget continues to be a little bit malleable. As the budget's refined, the work plan items are also refined in April and May. So our final budget and work plan is then submitted to IDOT to go into effect at the beginning of the new fiscal year, July 1, 2023. Next slide. Just a couple of highlights here. Again, I mentioned our strategic direction. It's focused on 3 core areas of work. that are really highly related to some of our areas of expertise here at CMAP: transportation, of course, climate, and regional economic competitiveness. Much of the work in our FY24 plan tackles the issues and advances priorities in these areas, as well as those intersections of those areas. So some of the highlights that you saw shared from our deputies in that video was just in the transportation area. We're excited to launch the Plan of Action for Regional Transit, the PART program, which is beginning now, but extending through FY 2024 and potentially beyond as we look at implementation activities. Vicki mentioned the safe travel and roadmap, safe travel for all roadmap, another high priority area, just thinking about the funding opportunities that lay ahead of us, plus also the significant public impact that traffic safety has on our communities. Focusing on climate, we're going to build on the assessments completed in FY23 to help our region address flooding per the contract that you approved this morning. We'll also be addressing air and water quality issues with comprehensive plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and better manage our water quality. And then at the intersection of these two focus areas, we will oversee carbon reduction programs as outlined by the new bipartisan infrastructure law, and help think about electric vehicle network infrastructure and how it can be addressed equitably across our region, and think about our transportation emissions that are produced across our region. Our work in the economy centers around partnerships. We continue to support the new regional Chicagoland Economic Partnership, which was announced earlier this year, and help our region work as one to attract sustainable industries, to build on our strengths as a freight hub. And then also, as we think about that transportation and economic intersection, thinking about our ADA program, thinking about the considerable economic benefits inclusion of mobility for everyone has on our economy, and thinking about, again, that safety throughout, or even sort of our smaller commercial corridors throughout the region. So those are just a few of the elements that are in our plan that prioritize the goals of 2050 plan of inclusive growth, prioritized investment, and resilience. But also, as mentioned, we've got a lot of operational stuff that just happens here on a yearly basis that's pretty consistent here. Forecasting, travel modeling, programming transportation funds through the STP program, the CMAP program, the Transportation Alternatives program. We've got communications and community engagement and other agency-wide services that are incorporated in this budget for this year. A little bit less than half of our work plan consists of short-term projects, many of which, and many multi-year initiatives as well. So there are a large number of projects initiated in FY22 that are slated for completion in FY 2024. And then several projects initiated in FY 2023 are slated for completion in FY 25. So the larger work, like the STAR program, the Safe Travel Roadmap for All program, will likely continue through 2027. So things that you'll see on an ongoing cyclical basis here. Just a few budget number highlights from the budget. Again, this budget is balanced at $29.1 million. It includes $6.3 million in grants to our partner agencies through the Unified Work Program. It also includes an additional $1.1 million in planning funds that was recently awarded to us through IDOT. A couple of weeks ago, we received word from IDOT that all of the states across all of the MPOs across the state will be receiving a little bit additional funding this year. While it's awarded for FY 2024, we have been in discussions with IDOT and FHWA that this has the potential to continue to happen for the next few years while they spend down some unexpended budget that they have at the state level. So we have been taking a few weeks to talk to our team about how we might spend these additional resources. As you know, as typical, we get asked to do a lot of things. This plan of action for regional transit was not on our horizon for last year, but it did bump some things to next year. So we're hopeful we can backfill with some projects here, but also just thinking about the regional economic work, thinking about the transportation resiliency work and the climate work as well. Those are probably where we will end up seeing those additional resources being added to throughout this year's budget. Slide 5, next slide, thanks. Fund distribution, our comms team put together, I think, what is a more cohesive, a more logical understanding or illustrative understanding of how federal funds move through the region from the federal down to the local level here. Much of our funding comes from FHWA and FTA through IDOT to all of the 16 MPOs. We're the largest, so we get the largest share of that funding. Again, I mentioned some of our funds go out to our partner agencies to help support the planning liaisons program, to help support county plans, and other core MPO functions like getting their staff to help participate in the regional planning process as well. So again, we spend these federal dollars on long-range planning activities, the 5-year transportation improvement program, the unified work program, and again, programming all of those other additional opportunities that we have to support projects in local communities across the region. And this budget also reflects a more sustainable funding source. And one of our key operational goals in our strategic direction was to diversify our funding sources to provide more stable revenue. We have taken significant steps to achieve that through local contribution increases this past year. We appreciate you and your support when you've had questions from members and inviting and allowing our staff to come talk to you through your councils of mayors as well. But local contributions now make up $1.6 million of our annual budget, and that is really directly tied to the increase in direct federal dollars that are available to our region over the next 5 years. This budget also funds important work in the economy and climate through funding from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, MacArthur Foundation, Chicago Community Trust, and Cook County. We will continue to apply for opportunities to diversify our funding. But again, I think the other thing that we've been talking about, and we've been working with John Carpenter and Kasha and Tim, is a state legislative agenda to receive more funds for CMAP for all of the requirements that were created and put into statute when CMAP was created here. So I think that is all I wanted to share with you this morning on our budget here. Again, these resources allow us to be responsive to you, to help you with data and information that you need to plan at the local level, but also allows us to inform and shape big regional policy and help support our implementers in making decisions that provide the best return on investment for any expenditures that they're making, whether it's transportation or other. So we appreciate your support. I welcome your questions on our budget overview and the proposed budget and work plan. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Aaron, other to say that, since this agency was formed, in the beginning, whether it was going to be the transportation or planning aspect of this agency, one moving forward than the other, I think we have coexisted with both of those goals. And as we said, almost 20 years ago now, that show me the money. And these is very exciting times for obviously our country, but certainly our region, for all the planning and work that's been done, the implementation now period of what's happening because of the money. And I think CMAP has been way out in front of the game as shown in transportation or climate or the economic development aspects. It's pretty exciting, and I think the buy-in from the region is incredible. I saw the list of those on the part committee, and those are all key people throughout the region. So I think certainly the cooperativeness of everybody in the region is also taking even a sharper turn and sharper edge. So there's good things come to our region, and it still takes planning. It still takes implementation, and I think we have been way out ahead of the curve regarding that, and whether it's the Fed or the state, I think they recognize that. And hopefully, as you indicated, continuing funding for what we do here over the next few years, we hope that does continue. Thank you. Are you going to take item 803?
So I think we're going to do item 802 first, and then I'll cover 803.
Okay.
Laura Wilkerson's going to cover our plan of action for regional transit report update.
Great. Thanks, Erin. As I keep threatening, I'm going to be here every board meeting to give you updates on what we're doing with the plan of action for regional transit, or PART, as Erin said. We want to make sure that as we move along through this process, this very important initiative, that we're consistently working with you and making sure that you are moving along with us as staff as we move towards trying to get this approved in October and move to the General Assembly in January of next year. So if you go ahead and go to the next slide, This is a repeat slide of what we have shared with you before, but I just want to keep making sure that we ground ourselves in what we've been asked to do for the General Assembly. It really is looking at the operating issues of the transit system. So again, when we talk in other places about capital and state of good repair, the discussions that we're going to be having over the next year is really thinking about the long-term financial viability of the operating system for transit. And within that space, making sure that we're really talking about the entire system, safety, security, land use, et cetera. Again, making sure that we look at through the lens at any recommendations to make sure that we're addressing racial equity, climate change, economic development, and building off the RTA strategic plan. And the legislation itself calls out some of the mechanisms that they want us to look at: recovery ratio, sales tax, governance structures, fare systems, and then anything else that we feel like we need to bring to them. So with that in very large mandate, we've really been spending, you can go to the next slide, the time over the last few months trying to develop really and refining the scope. So while it asks us to build a steering committee, which I will talk about as well, a lot of our work has been, what are we going to try to achieve in this very short period of time that the state can actually do something with in the General Assembly in 2024? How does it impact our system itself? And then the recommendations. So a lot, again, of our time has spent in the last few months really refining our scope and making sure we know what we're going to be attempting to move forward with. In January, as we discussed earlier, or we'll discuss later, is we convene the steering committee and putting that together. And then we have the course of this year to work with you, to work with our stakeholders, to work with the steering committee, to conduct public engagement. It will be a fast-moving year for us on this topic, and then bring this to you in October. The next slide. I wanted to kind of revisit a little bit about the roles and responsibilities and how we're going to be structuring this work. Ultimately, the legislation asks for the CMAP Board and MPO Policy Committee. We're bringing this to you for approve and submittal to the legislature, and we're going to be using our committee structure to look at these different topics within transportation, regional economy, and climate, as again, as the legislation calls out. So all of that information will be funneled up to you as well. The legislation asks for a steering committee, which Erin is leading. She is the leadership of that steering committee. And again, they will, through Erin, will be bringing those different pieces of information to you as the board. We do anticipate that some of the steering committee members may come to board meetings or have communication with you, but Erin will really be the conduit between you and the steering committee. And then again, we have consultant help that you guys have been approving and supporting us on, so I appreciate that as well. And I think that we can move on from there to talking again about how we're going to be communicating. Like I said, I'll be here every month and be able to answer any questions about as we move through this. So we really want to be bringing the different policy pieces, the information, the white papers to this group as well, so that we can be having some discussions about what's happening throughout the recommendations. We'll also be going to the MPO policy committees and then hosting each of the meetings. So we'll have a busy year just from the committees, but want to make sure that we're providing all the information and communicating with all of you as we move through this structure. Next slide. I also think it's important to note, because we're moving quickly and we want to make sure that you or the board are engaged and informed, and we're going to have a lot of topics that are going to be difficult and impact the region in different ways, that we've asked 4 of the members of the board to participate with us, looking at the kind of 3 different sections of the board for the Collier County, Suburban Cook, and the City of Chicago. So Mayor Noak, President Darge, and Mr. Schaefer, as well as President Browley, have agreed to kind of interact with us throughout the year in between those board meetings to make sure that we're getting input, providing information to you in the best possible way, and really preparing ourselves to go through this process in this year. So we're very excited to have those board members be working with us in between our board meetings as well. So thank you very much. I want to talk again, this is another slide that we've showed to you before, that we're really kind of putting the report and the scope into kind of 3 content areas. We're talking about the system we want, which really gets into bus service, fare integration, regional rail possibilities, ADA accessibility. And then Once we understand a little bit more of the system we want, and we're building off of the work that's been done here at CMAP, mobility recovery, RTA, and even with the service board. So we're not starting from scratch in that space, but we're building off of it. Then we talk about how we pay for it, what kind of reforms and funding are needed to support that operating. So that could be any sales tax, congestion pricing, tolling, et cetera, fare increases, fare policy. We're talking with the service boards about operational savings. So the how to pay for it bucket, and then how to implement it. What does that mean? What are the different reforms and structures and funding mechanisms that we need to implement or recommend in order to make the how to pay for it system we want work? So we're going to have, again, like I said, some complex discussions with you, with the MPO, with our steering committee, and with external audiences so that we can provide recommendations that will actually be achievable for the state to move forward on improving our operating fiscal cliff. Next slide. So we've talked a lot about structure, we talked a lot about committees, but we also want to let you know that we're not stopping there. There are so many stakeholders, there are so many people that need to be part of this process with us. I mean, we need to make sure that we're getting information from the public. So we have ways to leverage our existing public input from partners. We're working with the RTA, CTA, and IDOT to gather information through their different mechanisms. We will have our own public participation through our own survey, focus groups, stakeholder convenings. And then again, we want to utilize all of the stakeholder networks we have. So we'll be providing presentations to different organizations and by request, and then materials again for distribution so that we can continue to make sure that everybody is moving along through this process. And on the next slide, we kind of denote where we've actually put together an engagement and outreach strategy. There are so many people that are touched by transit or impacted by transit that we want to make sure that we are getting out to them, that we are communicating with them, whether that's from the state legislators and governor's office to housing and health stakeholders, that we really make sure that we're thinking about all the audiences that either need to be informed or part of our public input process. And then I think it's important to note that we convened our steering committee for the first time yesterday. I believe many of you received information about that. We put some press out about starting this whole entire process and who we've brought together. So you'll note that some of the co-chairs are names you've seen before and have worked with us in many different ways through the Active Transportation Alliance. Dan Cronin, formerly of DuPage, Carol Brown, Randy Blankenhorn, formerly of CMAP and IDOT, Derek Douglas with the Civic Committee, and Jackie Grimshaw from Center for Neighborhood Technology are really going to be our co-chairs in those areas of the report content that we want to be talking. They're going to be helping us kind of think through that. And then again, we have numerous members, about 27, 28 members of people throughout the entire region. Again, to note, we made sure beyond the recommendations or what was mandated in the legislation, which was civic, community, labor. We added academia to that. We also made sure that we had racial diversity within this group and geographic diversity in this group to make sure that we really provide all the perspectives that are needed. We also expect that they will be champions of this recommendations, as again, the report itself being completed is not the success that's taking it to the legislator and having them do something with it. So I think we're also expecting this group of people beyond our own committee and board and MPO structure to really be able to champion the recommendations so that we see action at the state level when this is done. And lastly, on next steps, again, we are constantly working right now to meet with different stakeholders, many of you, many of our other committee members and other organizations, so that we're making sure that we get input from everyone. We held the steering committee yesterday. The Enos Center for Transportation, which is one of our contractors on this, is starting to interview stakeholders to find out different perspectives. So again, you may get a call from us shortly to have some of those interviews happen. So that they can understand the state of transit in our region. We'll be sending out the public survey ourselves. And then we are putting together white papers on topical issues. So any of those things that we talked about in the content space, we want to provide research and be able to pull different best practices and recommendations for people to look at and discuss which again is what we do best here at CMAP, right? So we're hard at work to get that done. And then lastly, we have ongoing coordination. I have here RTA, but also the service boards and many of you. So we'll continue that with the next few months. And I'm happy to take any questions. Oh, and this is our project team leadership. So again, how to get a hold of me or our other deputies or the program manager, Elizabeth Scott, project manager, Daniel Como. Now I'm happy to take any questions.
Jim, you got your hand up?
Yeah, can we get a copy of the presentation emailed to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I guess my only interesting comment is regarding, the committee eventual recommendation. And again, going back years ago, didn't it all start with the state formula and funding, certainly the Regional Transportation Authority, whether or not you are going to be looking into that, or is this more so how we get other future funding?
No, I mean, we have researched and pulled together, right? We have the 2008 formula. We have the 2014 reform of the 2008 formula. So we are going to start with that information and then provide recommendations from there. So it is building off of those, but we are going to try to make recommendations through our work of either adjusting that, reforming that, building on that, depending on where we move. But it will be, we do have the information from both 2008, 2014 changes.
Thank you. I saw that legislation years ago, and it was the most complicated piece of maze of funding that I've ever seen in my life. And hopefully that can be straightened out, because I know the RTA and other agencies have always been consistently complaining about and or attempting to try each year to work together as to how that funding goes out, just in a region itself. So coming from enacting legislation, I would hope that there's a serious look at how that whole thing is it has been done and could be changed to make it more efficient and certainly beneficial to the region.
Yes, thanks. We'll be looking at it for sure. Bring recommendations.
No questions. Any questions or comments regarding it? Good luck with that. Like I said, you even pulled Steve Schickman out of retirement to get on that committee. Huh?
We did.
Aaron, is that it? Or I'm sorry, Laura, is
So
that
I
it?
think that's it for Laura. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to 8.03.
You got it.
All right, so this is a reporting back to the board. Your November 9th meeting, the CMAP board delegated its authority to the executive committee to consider and approve contracts required to complete the PART project. The executive committee met on December 14th and approved contracts with the Eno Center for Transportation and HNTB. Consistent with the bylaws, the executive committee is reporting these actions to the CMAP board. So for transparency's sake, this is here on your agenda. There is no action to take at this moment in time, but I am happy to answer questions if there are any.
Questions? All right, moving on to other business.
I have no other business before the board, Mayor. Not sure if there's anybody else who does.
Public comment?
Happy New Year to you, Mayor Bennett. This is Garland Armstrong. And
Happy New Year, Garland.
From Des Moines, Iowa. How's everybody doing there?
Well, if you've been on a meeting, we're very busy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And just want you to know, my wife celebrated her birthday on New Year's Day. And then 10 more days, we have our 19th wedding anniversary. So just want you to know in advance. And also, too, I want to give kudos to Aaron to finally get the ADA transition going, and me and Heather would like to say you guys are doing awesome, and make sure that the ADA getting help what they need and get more resources, and I want to give kudos to both of y'all for getting Karen Tamley from Access Living on there for the steering committee, because we finally definitely need the ADA to get involved in everything with what's happening right now with the changes and everything, and making sure that our voices will be heard and everything else. So it will definitely be the great 2023 for the ADA committee, and making sure that we finally get the the resources what we need. And also just want you to know that for the RTA, if there's any suggestions from us to helping y'all, since if y'all be expecting the budget shortfall of 730 million, just call us and then we can help you along the way with any suggestions you have for us and see if we can work it out together and see what we can do to help you along, since we're no longer living in Illinois. But you can call us, and if you need any help, just call us and we can help you guys along the way with what ideas you need from us. So I'll be glad to answer any questions or comments from you or any of the board directors while we're here.
Well, just thanks, Garland, and thank you for your continued advocacy. You have been at the forefront of this for many, many years, so thank you.
All right.
Any other public comments?
We've received no requests for other public comments this morning.
Okay, the executive committee will not be meeting. We will meet again in February. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 8th. You will be informed of those details coming down the road. If there's no other comments or questions, I thank everybody, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Darch.
Second, Sheehan.
Moved and seconded. Aaron, call the roll, please.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett,
Aye.
Frank Beal,
Aye.
President Brawley,
Aye.
Mayor Darch,
Aye.
Paul Goodrich,
Aye.
Jim Healy,
Aye.
Nina Itamudia, Mayor Note, President Reinbold,
Aye.
Mayor Rodering, Stefan Schaefer,
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield,
Aye.
Ann Sheehan,
Aye.
Matt Walsh,
Yes.
Diane Williams.
Aye.
The motion carries. Again, thanks, everybody, and we will see you in a month from now. Thank
We're
you.
planning for that meeting in person, so thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. You take care, Aaron, and we'll see you again next month, Aaron. And you rock, sister.